It's Marj Halperin is a Democratic strategist. She is in Chicago. Marj, good to see you on this Thursday. We heard from Joe Biden. That must have been difficult for him.
Well, it's difficult for all of us who had hoped for a different outcome, all of us in our country, and I know in Canada and countries around the world. It's a shock, to say the least, that this is the way our country went, but it's a message and an outcome that we have to spend some time analyzing and thinking about how we respond as we go forward.
What happens to Kamala Harris now, do you think? We heard a little bit from her, obviously a very emotional speech, not the speech she wanted to give, very difficult for her, probably going to take a while for her to process it. Similar, no doubt, to what happened 8 years ago with Hillary Clinton.
Right. It's, we had momentum at the end. We had an incredible ground game. I'm based in Chicago, and we've been canvassing from Chicago in both Michigan and Wisconsin. And someone who was on the Wisconsin team told me they canvassed Milwaukee 3 rounds. I was up in Muskegon, Michigan, pretty far north. We had incredible coverage. We talked to so many voters, but we clearly didn't make the connection that we thought we had. So from her standpoint, analysts say she ran a darn good campaign. It was short. Now, if we'd have had an open primary, if Biden had stepped aside from the beginning, we would have had a longer ramp. Would that have changed things? I don't know. I think that in the end, our message of compassion and sharing and lifting up others wasn't strong enough or relevant to people who really are hurting and feel that government has not paid enough attention to them. Now, I don't think Trump's agenda is going to reach them and do much for them. We'll see how that plays out.
We know that Senator Bernie Sanders is blasting your party. He says it was a disastrous campaign, and he says it should come as no surprise because your party has abandoned working class people, and now they've abandoned your party. Your thoughts on that?
You know, the night that Hillary Clinton lost, I have a longtime childhood friend who lives in Florida and is a typical Florida voter now. And she called me with condolences, a very kind call, but was gleeful that Trump had been elected. She said to me, maybe now the Democratic Party will pay attention to the working class. I was floored. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're the party of unions. We have been the party of advancing the minimum wage. We have health care is at the forefront for Democrats. There's all these things that should be helping working people. But clearly that isn't enough. When prices are high, when gouging continued, the reasons for the high prices were not clear to voters. We didn't make that case. Trump's agenda, again, economists say will drive us into the recession that Biden avoided successfully, but painfully. So I don't think the pain will be soothed by this next president, in which case we're going to have a real reckoning at the midterms in 2 years. There's a lot to analyze and a lot to think about, but there's no mistaking those elements of what Sanders said. Our message didn't reach the voters in a way that was compelling.
What's going to happen now for your party? How do you rebuild? How do you come back from this? How do you sort of deal with the fact that it looks, anyway, Marj, as if Donald Trump may have 5 million more votes than Kamala Harris in the popular vote?
Whatever the number turns out to be, the message is the same. We need to. I think. Let me say this. The part of all of Harris's speech I agreed with and connected with. But most important is we're fighting for the rights of a cross-section of people who have not gotten what they deserved. There is a white working class group that feels they were not included in that. I had someone tell me once, when your piece of pie feels small, you're not willing to share a single bite. And I think the core of our message about having compassion for people in need is still the right one. I can't imagine the Democratic Party will turn away from migrants, from people who are unhoused, people who don't have enough food, from children who can't get quality education, from the lack of health care that are making people die too soon and go into poverty because they can't afford their treatment. These are all things that I think the American people need and that the Democratic Party stands for and won't back away from in light of whatever agenda Trump actually decides to try to use to govern in the future. But in the meantime, we have to understand the relationships that are lacking so that this cross section of voters who did not trust that we had their best interests in mind will we have to learn how to connect with them in a better way.
Marj, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for this.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate your having me.
Yeah, Marj Halperin joining us from Chicago.